القيادة السورية على أرواح مواطنينا وأمن بلدنا.
Assad does not have significant military capability.
إذا قتلونا مع النادي حقتنا.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on FutureTV. I'm Lina Tamim and these are today's top stories. Lebanon is getting ready for a UN meeting in New York City next week to discuss ways to cope with huge numbers of Syrian refugees. The UN says its team of chemical weapons experts will return to Syria soon to investigate various accusations against the regime and the opposition. And Russia says it has new evidence from the Syrian government implicating rebels in a chemical attack in Damascus. Lebanon is getting ready for a UN meeting in New York City next week to discuss ways of helping the country cope with huge number of Syrian refugees. President Michel Sleiman chaired a meeting in Babda today to discuss the preparations for the September 25th conference, which will be held on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly meeting. The meeting was attended by Prime Minister Najib Mikati, concerned ministers and security officials. A separate meeting over the conference was held between Foreign Minister Adnan Mansour and U.S. Special Coordinator for Lebanon, Derek Plumey. Sources say the international meeting will likely lead to more assistance for the Lebanese army and economy. Hezbollah MP Mohammed Raad has met with Turkish ambassador to Lebanon over the cases of Lebanese pilgrims kidnapped in Syria and the 2 kidnapped Turkish pilots. Talks between Raad and the Turkish envoy, who met in the bloc's headquarters in Har Tahrik, also addressed the recent local and regional developments. The case of abducted hostages in Azaz has been linked to the August abduction of 2 Turkish airline pilots near Beirut's airport. On another note, officials are searching for a Turkish citizen whose car was found in Jounieh, north of Beirut. Security sources say the car had been parked in Mameltin since September the 10th. The Tashnak Party has announced its support for dialogue among the country's rival leaders without any preconditions, lauding an initiative launched by Speaker Nabih Berri. Tashnak MP Hagop Bakradonian says Berri's roadmap is positive, like any other dialogue initiative launched by him, after members of the Speaker's parliamentary blocs visited the Tashnak headquarters. Their visit is part of the meetings that Development and Liberation Bloc MPs are holding with top leaders and heads of parliamentary blocs to brief them on Berri's initiative that is aimed at ending the country's political crisis. Bakradonian says every aspect of the roadmap is linked to political security and economic stability, and added that these important issues should be discussed at the national level. Military Judge Fadi Sawan has issued arrest warrants for 3 more Syrians suspected of having a connection to a failed rocket attack in June on the Hezbollah-controlled Beirut southern suburbs. A judicial source says Sawan filed the charges after interrogating the men, identified as Mohammed Kabbar Tahan, Mohammed Ghayat Kara Tahan, and Omar Dirani. He charged them with buying and transporting rockets, as well as attempting to fire them from Aramoun into the southern suburbs of Beirut. 14 people, including Lebanese and Syrians, were charged earlier in September in the case of the failed rocket attack that struck power lines in Alay. Kurdish fighters have forced jihadists to pull out of a village in northeastern Syria after clashes that left 21 dead on both sides. This is according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which says fighters from the Kurdish People's Protection Units have been battling jihadists from Al-Qaeda-affiliated Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant and the Nusra Front for months now. Kurdish fighters seized the town after 4 days of clashes with the jihadists who had entered it from the border area. Syria's Kurds have walked a careful line between the opposition and the regime, which withdrew its forces from Kurdish areas in mid-2012. The UN Chemical Weapons Inspector's chief says his team will return to Syria soon to investigate various accusations against the regime and the opposition. On another note, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon calls for more determined efforts to resolve the Syrian conflict after a UN report by chemical weapons experts confirms that sarin gas was used on civilians.
The United Nations mission has now confirmed unequivocally and objectively that chemical weapons have been used in Syria. The facts speak for themselves. This is the most significant confirmed use of chemical weapons against civilians since Saddam Hussein used them in Halabja in 1988. This is a war crime and a grave violation of the 1925 Protocol and other rules of customary international law. I trust all can join me in condemning this despicable crime. I call for an end to arms flows to the country, which only sustain the bloodshed. I urge member states to consider what more we can do to prevent the human rights violations, including through the possible use of UN monitors. As the international community unites against the threat of chemical warfare, it must also come together to stop the wider war that is destroying Syria. I hope we can build on the diplomatic momentum and move quickly to a peace conference and a political solution. We need to do everything we can to convene the International Conference on Syria in Geneva as soon as possible.
Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Rybkov says the Syrian government has handed Russia new materials implicating rebels in a chemical attack outside Damascus on August 21st. Rybkov's comments come following talks with Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim in Damascus. The Russian official added his country was disappointed with the UN report into the chemical weapons attack published this week, saying it was selective and had ignored other episodes. Yesterday, Russia said the UN Security Council resolution on Syria's chemical weapons will not contain any references to the use of force. Following talks with French Minister Laurent Fabius, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the top task is to fulfill a plan for the destruction of Syrian chemical weapons. Well, coming up next, a winning lottery ticket of 4.7 million euros is still waiting to be claimed. That and more after the break. Welcome back. Gunmen have killed an Egyptian military officer and a soldier in an attack on an army vehicle northeast of Cairo, raising concerns that an Islamist insurgency is taking hold beyond the Sinai. On another note, Gaza rulers, Hamas, and residents of the Palestinian territory fear Egypt's destruction of tunnels used to smuggle goods across the border is part of a plan to tighten a blockade of the Strip. Egypt says it is part of a crackdown against Islamist militants in the Sinai Peninsula who have links to extremists in Gaza. Egypt's ambassador to the West Bank-based Palestinian Authority, Yasser Athman, says the measures are aimed at tightening security on the border. Jordan's King Abdullah II has held talks on the Syrian crisis with Chinese President Xi Jinping. In a meeting with Xi at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, the king described China as a team member of the UN Security Council and a friend of Jordan and the Middle East. Xi said he expected to exchange views with King Abdullah II on bilateral relations, as well as international and regional issues of mutual interest. Abdullah said that Jordan and China are committed to playing an active role in the peace process of solving the Syrian conflict. 32 people have been killed following a string of attacks across Iraq. Police and medical sources say a series of car bombs exploded in neighborhoods in southern and eastern districts, killing at least 15 people. In one of the attacks, 2 car bombs hit the neighborhood of Zafaraniya in southeastern part of the capital, killing 7 people and wounding 31 others. A third car bomb exploded at the commercial area of Batawin in downtown Baghdad, killing 2 people and wounding 8. The deadliest attack of all took place in the predominantly city of Fallujah in western Iraq, where 3 suicide bombers attacked a police station, killing at least 8 people. 1 person has been killed as supporters of Bangladesh's largest Islamic party clashed with police amid a nationwide strike called to protest against the death sentence awarded to one of its senior leaders for war crimes. Today's unrest comes a day after the country's Supreme Court sentenced Abdul Qadir Mullah, a senior member of the Jamaat al-Islami party, to death for committing crimes against humanity during the nation's 1971 independence war against Pakistan. Mullah and his supporters say the case against him is politically motivated. They've called for a 2-day countrywide strike starting today. And now for news around the world in brief. Customs officer in Belgium unveiled details on how they've intercepted a package of fake tickets for France's Louvre Museum. The Belgian Customs uncovered the package containing 3,600 tickets to the Paris-based museum on August the 19th during a campaign of cracking down on counterfeit medications. Officials did not immediately take action until the tickets were confirmed by the Louvre as fake. The Spanish city of Coruna is searching for the person who bought a winning lottery ticket of 4.7 million euros and left it behind the shop. The winning ticket for June 30th of 2012 was found by the owner of the lottery shop, who, after keeping it for 1 year in the shop's lost and found box, decided to check on it before throwing it away. If the original owner of the ticket does not appear, the money will go straight to the shop owner. A criminal court in Thailand hands a 2-year, 8-month prison sentence to Atris Hussein, a Swedish man of Lebanese descent, for illegal possession of explosive materials. But the court stopped short of implicating him in any plans to plant bombs. Thai police arrested Hussein in January of 2012 at Bangkok's main international airport following a U.S. alert over a possible militant threat. 49-year-old Hussein is accused of having links to Lebanon's Hezbollah. Moving on to the U.S. now, Occupy Wall Street campaigners have rekindled protests in New York City's Lower Manhattan to mark the 2nd anniversary of the movement, showing that the sentiments are still there and they will continue marching on. A pared-down version of the Occupy Wall Street movement was seen again in the Zuccotti Park, the place where the movement started on September 17th of 2011. It sprang up on the streets of New York City with the aim to campaign against Wall Street greed and corporate influence in American politics. The movement inspired dozens of spin-offs around the globe.
In year 2, more people now, it's more about building relationships, and people are getting more used to each other, so it's more respectful and people are understanding one another. And it's more about, I guess, this is a structure being built as far as like family structure and a brotherhood. So I guess year 2 is not as aggressive, as intense as the first year was, but I feel like this year is progressive, or even more progressive as the first year.
By assembling in the park, we were able to change the conversation, and inspired by that, we see that we can change other things. And it's not about the direct material things we do, it's more about the culture that we're transmitting.
It's clear that the global economic system is buckling. It's clear that around the world people are searching for answers. There's too much capacity around the world that's been built up in the bubble period of low interest rates, and something has to give. So let's see.
U.S. President Barack Obama rules out freezing deportations of most illegal immigrants in an interview with the Spanish-language network Telemundo. With a comprehensive immigration overhaul stalled on Capitol Hill, advocates have called on the president to move forward without congressional approval to halt the deportations, estimated at more than 1,000 per day. But Obama said such a move will violate federal laws, in his words.
My job in the executive branch is supposed to be to carry out the laws that are passed. I do get a little worried that advocates of immigration reform start losing heart and immediately thinking, well, somehow there's an out here. If Congress doesn't act, we'll just have the president sign something and that'll take care of it, and we won't have to worry about it. What I've said is that there's a path to get this done, and that's through Congress. And right now, everybody should be focused on making sure that that bill that's already passed out of the Senate hits the floor of the House of Representatives. It's not as if the votes are not there. Right. The votes are there. The only thing that's holding it back right now is John Boehner calling it to the floor, because we've got a majority of members of Congress, Democrats and some Republicans, in the House of Representatives who would vote for it right now if it hits. So this is really a question that should be directed to Mr. John Boehner. What's stopping him from going ahead and calling that bill? And he shouldn't be afraid of majority opinion on this thing. If in fact the overwhelming majority of the American people think we need to do something on immigration.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Lebanon is getting ready for a UN meeting in New York next week to discuss ways to cope with huge numbers of Syrian refugees. The UN says its team of chemical weapons experts will return to Syria soon to investigate various accusations against the regime and the opposition. And finally, Russia says it has new evidence from the Syrian government implicating rebels in a chemical attack in Damascus. Those were your Wednesday headlines from the English news team here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a great evening.
حرص القيادة السورية على أرواح مواطنينا وأمن بلدنا.
Assad does not have significant military capability.